Russia has condemned all forms of terrorism, stressing its support to the efforts exerted by the Iraqi authorities to combat terrorism and extremism. It pointed out that Al-Qaeda-linked terrorists who are active in Syria and Iraq don't recognize borders and bring death and suffering to the civilians in both countries. The Russian Foreign Ministry said in a statement that Moscow strongly condemns terrorism in all its forms and manifestations and rejects inflaming religious enmity, and that it was still convinced as ever before that the current wave of violence witnessed in Iraq has a regional dimension, as it is related in the first place to the events witnessed in Syria. The statement went on to say that Russia supports the policy adopted by the Iraqi authorities to combat terrorism and extremism, and that Russia provides practical assistance in this domain. The statement was concluded by saying that the most efficient and guaranteed means to foil the aggressive intentions was to speed up to reach a political solution for the crisis in Syria and realize a national consensus in Iraq that would best serve the best interests of the Iraqi people. Prime Minister Wael al-Halaqi underlined the government's willingness to boost bilateral cooperation with South Africa in the economic domain and to increase the bulk of trade exchange between the two countries. During his meeting with South Africa's ambassador to Syria, Shaun van Laftet, Prime Minister al-Halaqi voiced the government's willingness to boost prospects of bilateral cooperation and to benefit from the excellent experience of South Africa in achieving considerable economic growth and in the localization of investment. Al-Halaqi said that the growing role of the BRICS countries to become key economic and political players in the international arena has led to the formation of a new axis in the face of tyranny, colonialism and hegemony, leading to achieve a strategic balance in the international arena. Al-Halaqi also asserted that the Syrian government is determined to fight terrorism and to restore security and stability to every inch of the Syrian territory. The National Reconciliation Committee at the People's Assembly met Social Affairs Minister Kinda Shammat and discussed with her the issue of relief and humanitarian aid. Head of the committee, Omar Oussi, said this meeting is part of cooperation and coordination between the legislative and executive authorities, stressing the need to provide aid to those who are in a dire need and improve the conditions of those who fled their homes due to terrorism. He also called for holding those who exploit the difficult conditions of displaced citizens accountable. For her part, Shammat asserted that the ministry is exerting great efforts to ensure that aid reach all affected people, affirming that the accusations directed at the Syrian government regarding humanitarian issues seek to pressure it and instigate people against it to serve foreign agendas. She pointed out that terrorists are hindering the delivery of humanitarian aid to Deir Ezzour and Al-Hasaka province, adding that aid is being airlifted to these areas despite the difficult nature of this procedure. Ministry of Health launched the second national vaccination campaign against polio that targets 2.2 million children under 5. Health Minister Saad al-Naif stressed that all health centers are prepared and ready to receive children and that vaccines are available in all the provinces. He added that the 5-day vaccination campaign, just like other previous or coming campaigns, is carried out in cooperation with civil society associations to ensure access to all areas. The immunization campaigns inside Syria have coincided with several similar campaigns in neighboring countries through medical centers and the crossing borders to ensure that all targeted children are reached. Rudolf Tangram of Polio program at the World Health Organization hailed the Health Ministry's preparations for the vaccination campaigns and the great turnout to the health centers, stressing that the ministry is doing a great job. He noted that the current campaign is going in the right direction in terms of both preparation and implementation.
I think from what we have seen that the Ministry of Health has again done an excellent job in preparing for this activity, and as we can see from this health center, there is very strong interest by the population to participate. So we are very impressed by what we have seen, both in terms of preparations and implementation.
The campaign targets 750,000 children in Aleppo, 47,000 in As-Suwaida, 328,000 in Hama, 108,000 in Dara'a, 141,000 in homes and 241,000 in Al-Hasaka. Those include children at schools and makeshift residential centers who can have access to vaccines through the health centers and medical workers and volunteers, in addition to mobile teams and Syrian Arab Red Crescent teams, so as to reach children in inaccessible areas. The Ministry of Health has set a plan to carry out 6 nationwide vaccination campaigns against polio after a number of polio cases have been detected in Syria. A mass was held today at St. Sarkis Church for Armenian Orthodox of Damascus Parish to mark Christmas following the Eastern calendar. Archbishop Nalbandian called for peace and stability in Syria. He also called on all the Syrians to unite firmly and to be armed with love and tolerance in the face of terrorism. Archbishop Nalbandian reminded the worshippers that Syria has always stood by their side during the hard times, calling on them to show their national feelings and to stand firmly in the face of its enemies. As part of the arbitrary policy followed by the Israeli occupation in the villages and the towns of the occupied Syrian Golan, and with the aim of multiplying attempts to isolate the areas and to separate the villages there, the Israeli forces of occupation set up a number of military checkpoints and barricades at the entrances to the occupied towns and villages. Also, as part of its racist policies, the Israeli occupation declared the devastated village of Jbat al-Zayt, west of the occupied Majd al-Shams, as a closed military zone.
Formerly school students yesterday took the first term exams all over the country, giving the whole world a clear message saying that the children of Syria are more powerful than the fires of terrorism and Takfiri mentality.
Taking the exams at the scheduled time set by the Ministry of Education is a new proof of the failure by the terrorists to undermine the Syrian students' will. The students' determination to continue their education has been fostered by the measures taken by the ministry in cooperation with other bodies concerned and the students' families to guarantee the continuation of the educational process. Among these measures were applying part-time class attendance to cope with the shortage in the number of schools, as some have been targeted by terrorists, while others have been turned into temporary sheltering centers for displaced families. Efforts also included providing all educational process requirements and teaching and administrative staff. During a tour to a number of examination centers in the city of Damascus, Education Minister Hazwan Alwiz stressed the ministry's keenness to provide students with good and comfortable atmosphere to enable them achieve the required results. Alwiz announced that the Russian language will be taught at schools starting at the 7th grade, where students will have to choose between the French and Russian as a second foreign language beside English.
Syrian Arab Army destroyed several terrorist hideouts in Lattakia countryside and in Dara'a and its countryside, killing many terrorists and injuring others. A military source said that the Syrian Arab Army foiled an infiltration attempt by a terrorist group into the area of Qast al-Ma'af in the northern countryside of Lattakia, killing many terrorists and injuring others. Among the terrorists killed, there were the Turkish Bakir Othman, Bisar Shawish and Nuruddin Oglan, in addition to Fahmi Mualla Musa. Also, the Syrian Arab Army units killed a number of terrorist leaders, destroying their weapons and ammunition which were hidden in their hideouts in the towns of Ataman and Al-Hirakim and in the neighborhood of Al-Karak and Asad in Dar al-Balad. Also in the area of Al-Ba'ajin in Deir Ezzour, Syrian Arab Army units restored security and stability as the workshops from the Governorate's services Directorate started their work of maintenance and rehabilitation at the time when residents started to return to their houses and properties. As the Spanish cops arrested a Spanish national, they suspected him to be linked to Al-Qaeda terrorist group, which is fighting in Syria. The Daily Best U.S. press has mentioned that a dangerous double game by Saudi regime through sending terrorists to Syria and reassuring the West about fighting terrorism.
Saudi regime increases its overt and clear support for the radical Islamic groups and Al-Qaeda branches in Syria. Jamie Demeter, writer of the article that talks about the Saudi jihad in Syria from U.S. intelligence sources, said that tens of Saudi terrorists were allowed to travel from Riyadh without any obstacles, as some of them were freed from jails, whereas Franklin Lump from the Counterpunch magazine has pointed out at increasing crimes committed against citizens in areas occupied by what is called the Islamic State in Iraq and Sham, stressing on the huge restrictions imposed on women there. The Russian analyst Vladimir Alexiev, in his article Why Does Not Saudi Arabia Want Stability in the Gulf, stressed that the Saudi governors during these circumstances think only about securing their soldiers, without seeking stability in the region, while the intelligence analysts in the West recommended that the Syrian army should remain steadfast and strong.
In a statement, the Iraqi Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki has called upon the locals of Fallujah to repel the terrorists from their city and to keep it away from a possible offensive and the ensuing dire consequences of armed confrontations. In relevant context, Iraqi political powers have called for filing a case to the United Nations against Saudi Arabia for supporting and funding terrorism in Iraq. Media and intelligence reports have indicated that Saudi Arabia was involved in the crimes and terrorist attacks perpetrated in Iraq recently, which resulted in destroying Iraq's infrastructure and claiming the lives of thousands of Iraqis. With this, we end our news for today. Thank you for watching. For more details about Syria and the region and to view this bulletin again, you can always visit our website in English, www.syriaonline.sy. Now to the latest in business and market news with Vani Konajian, but after a short break.